All right, let's jump right in. 10.6%. Now, that's not just a random stat. That is the highly impressive order growth Kone delivered in the second quarter of 2026. If you've been wondering exactly how a massive global industrial company navigates today's complex economic environment, well, this number is your first really big clue.
Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking Kone's half-year 2026 financial report, and we're going to be looking closely at two incredibly important parallel narratives. First, we have Kone's fiercely strong standalone foundation right now. And second, there's this massive industry-shifting catalyst looming right on the horizon.
You know, Kone's president CEO, Philippe Delorme, really hit the nail on the head. He noted, "We delivered a strong second quarter, highlighted by order growth of more than 10%. He also emphasized a total reacceleration of modernization, pointing to double-digit growth across all regions. It totally sets a tone of momentum, right? It proves that even with persistent inflationary pressures out there, their core strategy is executing beautifully.
So, here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover their strong first-half performance, changing global market dynamics, the massive TKE megamerger, their leadership in sustainability, and finally, how they're navigating future risks.
Okay, Part 1. Strong first-half performance, building a resilient core.
You want to talk about scale? Just think about managing an order book sitting at over 9.6 billion euros at the end of June 2026. I mean, that represents a 12.3% jump compared to the previous year. Having an immense backlog like that, it provides this incredible financial buffer and total visibility into their future revenue stream. And when you break down that revenue for the first half of the year, it reveals a very deliberate strategy. Service dominates at 46%, new building solutions makes up 35%, and modernization is at 19%. This is absolutely not an accident. Kone is strategically pivoting away from relying solely on new construction, which, as we know, can be super cyclical, and leaning heavily into service and modernization. Demand there is just surging globally thanks to aging equipment and the massive push for building energy efficiency.
So the real so what here is how this favorable business mix translates into sheer profitability. For the first half of 2026, adjusted EBIT reached 663.5 million euros. But more importantly, if we just look at the second quarter alone, their adjusted EBIT margin improved to 12.6%. The shift toward these high-margin services, combined with fixed cost leverage, is demonstrably working. It's actively shielding them from the margin pressures they're fighting in other areas of the business.
Moving on to Section 2, changing global market dynamics, where the growth is.
If we zoom out to the global operating environment for a second, the macroeconomic factors at play right now are wildly diverse depending on which corner of the globe you're looking at. So, while service and modernization grew practically everywhere, the market for new building solutions is completely fragmented by region.
Honestly, it's a tale of two markets. On one side, you have Greater China. Historically, that's been a massive driver for new equipment, but because of intense competition and really weak construction activity lately, sales there actually declined by 5.8% in Q2. But then you contrast that with their growth markets. The Asia-Pacific, Middle East, and Africa regions saw comparable sales surge by 12.3%. That was driven by incredible momentum in places like India and the Middle East. Meanwhile, the Americas also posted solid comparable growth of 5.6%. This kind of geographical balancing act is exactly why Kone's massive global footprint is so vital to their stability.
All right, Section 3, the TKE megamerger, the catalyst for transformation.
Okay, we have to talk about the planned combination with TKE. The core mechanics of this deal are just staggering. Kone has agreed to acquire TKE in a 5 billion euro cash and share transaction. And the goal here isn't just about getting bigger for the sake of it. It's about accelerating innovation, rapidly expanding connectivity, and really scaling their ability to deliver sustainable modernization across a rapidly aging global elevator base. To put the projected scale of this combined entity into perspective, and this is based on last year's figures, we are looking at an illustrative annual sales figure of approximately 20.5 billion euros, over 2.7 billion in adjusted EBIT, about 3.2 million units under maintenance worldwide, and incredibly, service and modernization would jump to make up about 65% of their total sales. Plus, they're anticipating roughly 700 million euros in annual run rate cost synergies by the end of year 3. Honestly, this is why this merger is such a defining moment. It literally rewires the competitive landscape of the entire industry.
Which brings us to Section 4, leading in sustainability, the cut carbon shift.
During the second quarter, Kone actually stepped up and validated its near-term science-based targets. Using 2022 as their baseline, they've aggressively committed to a 46% absolute reduction in their Scope 1 and 2 emissions by 2030. Now, for the much harder to tackle Scope 3 emissions, which involves the entire value chain and product lifecycle, they are targeting a 40% reduction by 2030. And all of this is actively paving the way toward their ultimate goal, achieving net zero across the entire value chain by 2050.
And crucially, these efforts are receiving top-tier external validation. They aren't just grading their own homework here. In Q2 of 2026, Kone ranked 371st on Time and Statista's World's Most Sustainable Companies list. That makes them one of the highest-scoring elevator and escalator companies in the world. They also secured a highly coveted spot on the CDP's Supplier Engagement Assessment Leaderboard. These validations matter immensely, especially when they're competing for major global building projects that mandate super strict environmental standards.
Finally, Section 5, Navigating Future Risks, Headwinds on the Horizon.
Now, no massive transformation comes without some serious headwinds. Here are the major risks they've actively outlined. First, the ongoing subdued construction market in China remains a persistent drag. Second, unpredictable geopolitical tensions continue to threaten global supply chains, specifically driving up logistics and ocean freight costs. Third, as they digitally connect more of their elevators, and keep in mind 44% of their service base is already connected, the risk of cyber threats and IT disruptions inherently rises. Fourth is labor scarcity. Finding and retaining skilled field technicians is getting harder and harder. And finally, the TKE transaction itself carries heavy execution risk. Mostly, that's about the exact timing of receiving all those complex regulatory approvals across different global jurisdictions, which Kone anticipates happening at the earliest in the second quarter of 2027.
Which leaves us with this massive, lingering question to end on today. How will the ongoing regulatory review of the TKE merger ultimately shape the next chapter of the global elevator and escalator industry? Will Kone smoothly transition into this new 20 billion euro behemoth, or will the friction of global regulations slow down this massive catalyst for transformation? It is a fascinating space to watch for sure. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.